Hello and welcome to Where Are They Now with Mario Toneguzzi on MegaPixx Media, brought to you today by Spolumbos. Joining me today is Randy Chevrier, who is a former CFL and NFL player and now a Calgary Firefighter and a keynote speaker. Thanks for joining us today, Randy.
Thanks for having me, Mario. I appreciate this.
Well, let me just ask you to start off. Tell me, since when your football career ended, what have you been up to and what have you been doing?
Well, since it ended, I guess 2016 was the last game I played, and that was actually with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. From there, I transitioned about a half a year later. I got finally accepted into the Calgary Fire Department, so I was in training with them for 3 months, and I've been a firefighter since 2017, and I do a lot of odds and ends on the side. Like I was substitute teaching for a bit, but I've kind of had to put that to the side. I do some work. I started with Tony Fasano. We started a football academy, and it's called the Canadian Football Academy. So we do camps for kids and stuff, and so between firefighting and the camps and some other things, I keep pretty busy.
Okay, so the Canadian Football Academy, and you also speak a lot, all right? Tell me who your audience is when you speak and what topics you talk about.
Yes, well, I actually have various things that I speak on, whether I go to schools and talk about bully prevention, or there's a couple of other causes. I've worked with the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters, but I also do corporate talks on leadership, motivation, and mentorship. That's a very huge point of interest for me. And I base a lot of it on my career as a guy that played for a long time and took pride in my role, but I wasn't a star. And when I talk in the corporate world, I talk a lot about resilience and doing things that bring you pride, and that, just like in football, nothing always happens exactly the way you planned. I was a JP Metris winning defensive lineman in Canada. I went to the East-West Shrine game. I got drafted to the NFL. But yet what kept me playing football for 16 years was the fact that I could long snap. Now, my plan as a professional athlete was to be a defensive tackle, hit quarterbacks, be a defensive star.
Yeah.
But when I got to the next level, they saw my use in the skill that not everyone else could do. And at the time, it was a hard pill to swallow because I wanted to be the defensive tackle. I wanted that role that I prepared for. But yet this other thing that I was really good at, there wasn't a lot of people that can do that. And that mirrors corporate culture where, not everyone that works at Microsoft wants to work in the mailroom. And I'm not saying you have to be satisfied with working in the mailroom, but you have to understand that when you're part of something larger, you're not always going to get what you want. And you have to work hard. You have to be resilient. You have to understand that not everyone is going to be the top salesman. Not everyone's going to be the star quarterback on the team. But if you want a chance at that trophy, whatever that trophy is in your world, you have to sometimes make some compromise. It doesn't mean you have to be satisfied, but you have to do your job. You have to be professional. You have to be prideful, because the minute you're not, there's someone that wants the job that you don't want.
Yeah.
And people forget that. And that's just like in sports. So when I go do corporate talks, that's a lot of my focus. The last year has been really tough for a lot of businesses. Obviously in Alberta, we've been feeling the crunch years before the pandemic. So we kind of get double hit out here. But, the focus with a lot of the talks that I do is the resilience piece, the getting up after you get knocked down. And again, not just in my sports life, but even, coming out of university, going into my draft year, I had been stabbed. I had been stabbed in the chest before my what was supposed to be my showcase year in college. And that could have really set me back. But I used that as the catalyst for work ethic that was unmatched. And it wound up working in my favor, because then I did get drafted to the NFL. Then things did happen. So I have a number of things in my life that I've learned from that have fueled me to greater heights. And a lot of times that was on the heels of some really great tragedy or great trauma. And it's no different than the business world where people have to reinvent themselves because maybe their industry shut down. And, much like you do, you have to reinvent yourself. So you have to take stock of your positive attributes and use those and go forward, as opposed to dwell in the negative, which really traps a lot of people. So that's what I talk about when I do the corporate stuff.
Now, so you're going back in time when you're talking about this stuff. So I think I saw that you fractured your ribs in a car accident when you were playing at university, right?
Yeah.
And then after in Montreal as well, you were stabbed in the chest. That was pretty darn serious, I understand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of within a few inches of my life. If it would have hit my my liver, I would have been in trouble.
So you have come across a lot of challenges in your life, right? Both professionally, personally, obviously, with the injuries. Where do you find it? What's your message for people? Where do you find that inside you to overcome those challenges?
That's a good question. I don't know where that energy came from. I mean, I've always been a silver linings kind of guy. I have to say, but when it comes to things like that, I'm not too sure, because some of those things happen early in life. I was in university when I broke my ribs in a car accident 3 days before training camp. 2 years later, I had been stabbed. But there have been a few instances in life where I was told I couldn't do something. Actually, I got into football totally by accident. I started football really around the age of 18, and I got in because post high school, my only thing I wanted to do is I wanted to join the military. That was kind of my dream.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't get in because of my eyesight. And I passed all the tests and everything. When I did the final thing, which was the medical, I didn't get into the field I wanted because my eyes were too bad. And it was kind of like a crushing blow. And that was like the one point in my life where I wanted something so bad, and out of my control, it was taken away from me. And I had done everything I could. And I realized that's going to happen in life. You can control, as much or as little in a situation. But when it's taken away from you, you have to react. And I remember, like, I was crushed after the military thing. I didn't know what to do. That was all I wanted out of high school. I didn't have like these huge dreams. That was it. And when that happened, I had to really turn around quick and say, okay, what do I want to do? And it started. I had some buddies that played football, and they said you should try out. And I didn't know a thing about football, but I tried out. And long story short, I actually liked it. And I realized, okay, I can focus my energy to something else and find passion in something else. So that was the first time that I had that experience with sort of loss and having to pivot, having to shift.
Yeah.
And again, it happened a few years later when I got in the car accident. And then when I got stabbed, they said, well, you might not be able to play football. And it became this, okay, well, I'll show them attitude.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I got to the NFL, so a year after I got stabbed, I get to the NFL, the first speech I heard was, welcome to the NFL. From this day forward, we're trying to replace you. And that burned into my brain. And that statement was every year, you remember, they're trying to get rid of you. And it was kind of like, I fueled a lot of my career in trying to overcome that and trying to prove that statement wrong. Now, for good or for bad, it worked. Now, I'm trying to reframe myself in my post-football career. Instead of always looking for the voices of people saying I can't do things, I'm trying to honor the voices of the people that always knew I could do things. Because it becomes a real negative headspace to always try and find the voices of people that say you can't do something and then prove them wrong.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot healthier to listen to the people that say, hey, you're awesome at this. You're really good. You should do it. And you'd be like, yeah, I should. But most people, especially athletes, we always listen to the negative voices. You can have your mom, your dad, your friends tell you you're the best, but that one person on Twitter tells, the starting quarterback of the team, oh, you suck, you're garbage. He's spending time answering the fan that's telling him he's garbage as opposed to absorbing the positive energy. So those are things that I've learned over time, right? And I've been blessed to have a long enough career to recognize how those things have affected me. But I would say it came early on after high school that I got that mentality of, you know what, you're down, it sucks, but what are you going to do about it? You're going to stay there. You stay in that valley as long as you want, and then you start getting out the minute you decide a positive attitude to go forward. And again, there's times in my career with the Stampeders. In 2011, I sat on the bench for the first 6 games of the season because the coaches said, well, we're going to try and go a little younger. We're going to keep you around, but we're going to try and go a little bit younger. Well, I'm a 10-year vet at that point, and I'm wondering, well, you know what? Like sometimes you see it. I saw it in the locker room when I played with 10-year vets. You wonder, well, like, how do you get your motivation to come to practice every day? How do you go in the weight room when you're sitting around and they're not even using you? How do you? And so I've also developed this attitude that you're a professional athlete, at least when I was an athlete, and no matter what industry, but let's talk about football. You're a professional athlete, not just because you get to play on game day. You're a professional athlete because every day you get to show up and do that sport, that practice, the film session, the training, whatever it takes to be ready in case you get a chance. And again, that happened. That same year, I got a chance again. 2014, same thing. I sat on the bench the whole year except for 3 games. I didn't dress in the Grey Cup when we won. I was 38 years old. I actually tore my meniscus at the end of the season, like practicing for the Grey Cup. For all intents and purposes, my career should have been done. But that year, every day I came in early. I worked out. I mentored the young guys, even the guys that took my job. I came in and I tried to do the best job I could do with the role I was given. It wasn't the role I wanted. I wasn't very satisfied sitting on the bench while everyone was playing the game. But I learned from these things.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, I came back and I was 38 years old. They brought in 5 long snappers to camp, and I wound up winning my job again. And I would not have had that opportunity if I didn't choose a positive attitude the year before when I wasn't where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
So I've learned these things over my career, and I really want to share them with people, especially now. Like, we're in this time where people are really down in the dumps. And it's like, there are opportunities out there. And if they're not out there, you could create them, and it might be just a little bit of traction you need to get your foot in the door for something else that you want to do, but you always got to pick yourself up because it takes you. It takes you to take that first step. It's like, for instance, when a quarterback gets hit, right? He gets knocked to the ground. Offensive linemen, they come over, they reach their hand out, and the quarterback reaches his hand up, and then together they get up. But if the quarterback just lies like dead weight, and the offensive lineman grabs his hand and tries to pick him up, he's never going to get him up. And it's the guy that's on the ground that has to make some effort to get up first. And the more efforts you make, soon you start getting people around you to say, hey, you're doing something here. You see it.
Yeah.
But you got to take those steps when you're down.
Yeah. So so your football career, you played university with McGill, right?
Yeah.
And in the NFL, you had stints with the Dallas Cowboys and Cincinnati Bengals. And then the CFL, you were with Edmonton. I don't even know what to call them anymore, with their nickname, right? Who knows? But the Edmonton, formerly.
Well, back in the day, we were the Eskimos.
Yeah,
we were the Eskimos back in the day. Now they're the Edmonton football team. But I was with the Eskimos. And just like at McGill, I was a member of the Redmen.
Exactly. And the Calgary Stampeders and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Now, did I read this correctly that you've been on 3 Grey Cup championship teams?
Yeah.
3.
So 3 Grey Cup championships teams. 2003 with Edmonton, 2008 with the Stamps, and 2014 with the Stamps.
Okay, super.
And I've also lost 2.
Oh, wow. What when you look at your football career, Randy, what do you think, what would you say the highlight of your football career was?
Gosh, honestly, Mario, the whole thing, I felt very fortunate, first of all. Like I said, I started very late. I didn't have exposure to football growing up. Montreal Alouettes didn't even exist when I was a teen. Before, they were gone in the 80s. They had folded, and they only came back once the Baltimore Stallions moved to Montreal. So I didn't have a huge exposure to football. And when I did start, I loved it right away. And I just wanted to keep absorbing it and play as long as I could because I loved the sport when I learned about it.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I was like a fan that got to play. And I got some really neat experiences, like you mentioned, the NFL, CFL, Grey Cups, so many teams, so many teammates. Like, not too many people get to play 16 seasons. But I got to say, like, truthfully, the most memorable thing was all the stuff I got to do because I played football. You know, like all the charitable events, all the autograph things with the kids, like those things are so fulfilling. You know, how many athletes, don't have a cent to their name, even though they had a nice long career? How many athletes can't even remember a play on a field? I can't remember that, but I remember the feeling of, the day before a game, me and the guys would go to the kids' hospital, we have fun. Like, we did some charity events. Like, that stuff for me was very, very fulfilling. And I remember it started at McGill. We used to play locally between Concordia and McGill. We used to play the Shrine Game. It was the Shriners Hospital in Montreal. And we would have an annual Shrine Game. And it was the first exposure I had to the power of the symbol we wear. You know, we'd go as university athletes, and we were kids, but we'd go to the Shriners Hospital, and to these kids, we were the greatest thing that ever happened to them, signing autographs and stuff. And I'll never forget that. And when I came to the Stampeders in 2005, that was the first thing I did. Kelsey Goldade, he was the Stamps PR guy. He did everything. Back in the day, there was one guy that did internet PR, communication. Like, there was one guy for everything. Now, so you got 10 people in each department, but he was one guy. And I said, Kelsey, if you give me a couple of Sharpies, a couple of posters, and we wear our jerseys, I'll take 3 or 4 guys, and we'll go to the old children's hospital on Crowchild and 17th there. And that's what we did. That was how it started. We'd go to the hospital, we would walk around, sign autographs, give mini footballs, and from there the program grew. And so things like that are things that I'm really proud of, because I wasn't a star. I understand my place on the football team. I was just like one notch above the water boy. You know, when you're the long snapper on the team, not too many people know who you are. And if all I was ever known for was being a guy that could throw a ball between my legs very well, it'd be a pretty unfulfilling career. So for me, honestly, the ability to take that horse, put on my jersey, and go out and do good things for people was, for me, the most honorable thing I could do. And I think it kind of translates into the career now as being a firefighter, and I know what it does for people.
Yeah. What speaking of which, what do you like about being a firefighter? Why did you choose that profession?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Stu Laird, the former Stampeder, he just retired as a battalion chief with the Calgary Fire Department. He had talked to me for years about the possibility of joining, and I had a teaching degree. I did many things in my career with the Stamps to figure out what I would do after football. I was a realtor, I was a mortgage broker, I did sales, I did personal training, just looking for that thing, because I always remembered they're gonna replace you, right? Like, that was the first thing I heard. So I was always looking, and I didn't know if I wanted to be a teacher. I wasn't sure, right? And then Stu kind of kept on me, and one year I finally looked into it and I started researching it. And I tell you, it's everything that I was made for. It's helping people. It's part of a team, and it's very physical.
Yeah.
And those are things that I love. And when I got on the fire department, I absolutely just loved it. It was the most transferable industry for someone coming from sport, with that identity of team and a role within a team. Like, I function very well as a subordinate. And that meaning, if there's a leadership hierarchy and I have a job, I do it. And I'm a good soldier. And in the fire department, everyone has a job. And depending on your seniority, depending on your experience, that's your job. And I love that. I love being with the guys. Like, it was totally me. Now in September, I transitioned to another role within the fire department. I'm a community safety officer. So now I'm more on the educational side. So I go into schools, I go into seniors' homes, I help people with fire prevention and fall detection for seniors and people with disabilities. And it's just kind of using a different skill set I have. And it works well for my situation. I have some young kids. It's a more stable schedule that I can be more present in their lives. But I do miss being a firefighter on the floor, as they say, but I really love the role I have now, because it's a very social role. I go out and I meet citizens, and I could see the impacts, positive impacts, going to help a senior with their smoke detectors to make sure that they're protected.
Yeah.
Whereas as a firefighter, sometimes you don't even know the result of going to help someone. Like you go to a call, if it's a medical, you help keep someone alive, and then they go in the ambulance. You never hear what happens after.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy where I'm at now in the fire department and in my career. Absolutely.
All right, super. Well, thanks very much, Randy. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Well, thanks so much, Mario. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, that was Randy Chevrier, who is a Calgary firefighter, a keynote speaker, and a former Canadian Football League player on 3 Grey Cup winning teams. Also had a stint with the NFL. This has been Where Are They Now with Mario Toneguzzi on MegaPixx Media, brought to you today by Spolumbos. Thanks for joining us.